Hi, welcome to my channel. This is my first video and I'm making it in quarantine, and if your family is like anything like my family, quarantine has turned everyone into a bit of an online shopper, which means that we get a lot of this stuff, which is great if you rely on heating your house with a fire, but we don't. So we've got loads of this stuff over from various purchases, and I decided to challenge myself with what I could make using this paper. So let's get into it.
I started off by taking a bunch of the paper and laying it out and cutting big pieces that were about a metre long and 50 centimetres wide, and layering them all together. I got about 4 layers of paper and glued them all together. My glue was not having a good day, so it was quite stressful trying to get it out, but eventually I got all of them like glued together, and by the end it was all quite thick, so it was quite hard to bend, which is what I was looking for, because I wanted the bodice to be nice and sturdy, so that it wouldn't rip whilst I was in it or whilst I was sewing it, so it was nice and flat. And then I went ahead and cut out some bodice shapes. So the design is a sweetheart neckline, so with princess seams. So this is the centerpiece. I forgot to give myself seam allowance. I had to go back and cut out another section with seam allowance, which meant that it was quite tight getting all the pieces cut out of that one 4-layered section, but I did manage to do it in the end. I didn't measure it to myself, so it was quite a rough guess of what would fit. So I had to go back and fit it during the process because I made it too big, so I had to make it smaller. So here are all the pieces from the initial bodice that I made. I had to add more pieces to the back because I wanted it to be a bit more closed in. I sewed it all. It was quite tricky getting it through my machine because the seams got quite bulky quite quickly, and I broke several pins trying to sew it, but eventually it worked and I managed to get it to fit me to some degree. So here's what the bodice looks like once I'd sewn all of the seams together, and that's it flipped inside out, so that's what it looks like. I then went ahead and cut out some phone sized shapes of paper that was just a single layer thick. These are going to be the loops for the back of the bodice so that I can get in and out. So I folded each piece over and over so that it was nice and sturdy, and so that all the raw edges were kind of enclosed inside, and then I sewed across that. So I did about 8 of these. I in the end only used 6, but wanted to make sure that I had enough. So I took these pieces that become the loops and folded them into these shapes. I don't know what you would call these shapes, but these were what became the loops for the corseted back. I then trimmed the bottom of the bodice so that it was more even, because I hadn't trimmed it, and I attached the loops to the back of the bodice. So I was initially going to do 4, but there wasn't really enough room and it looked quite squidged and messy, so I just did 3 and I sewed them on. I then went ahead and made the off-the-shoulder kind of neckline look. So I took a long strip of material or fabric and folded the kind of nasty edges in, so that it looked nice, and I folded and trimmed and sewed it so that it would look nice on the neckline. So after breaking several needles and all the pins started to get bent, I decided that I was just going to mask and tape the top of the dress in, or the top of the neckline, because it just wasn't worth all of the pins. So yeah, eventually, and I quite like the way that the neckline looked with the mask and tape. It was quite collected. It was also at this point that I kind of decided that I was going to do a bit of a Met Gala look. So this is the skirt. I did only 2 layers of paper, and I wanted to make it nice and big because I was going to do pleats. So I just kept slathering on some glue and kind of smushing it all down so it was nice and flat, and fixing any rips that were in the paper, so that it all came out nice and flat and secure. I then took 2 of the long pieces and glued them together so that it made an even longer piece, and I just smushed that together. So there's the nice long piece that I'm going to pleat all together. I didn't set the camera up in the right place here, so you can only kind of see what I'm doing on the end, but you can see I'm kind of bending the paper and folding it and pushing it down so that it's all nice and flat. So I keep measuring it to try and make it fit as close as I can to my waist. In the end, it was not quite small enough, so I had to trim it down again. I decided that it was too long. I thought it made it not look very nice with how long it was, so I went ahead and hacked off some of the bottom. It was about here that I decided that I was going to do this paper dress for the kind of Met Gala, because I'd seen people on Instagram doing similar things, and I here secured down some of the broken folds that were starting to rip, so I made them a bit stronger. I decided that because the Met Gala's theme was fashion through time, I decided that the paper was more of a futuristic thing with how we should be more environmentally sustainable with our clothing, but then I put in hints of kind of older fashion through time, such as like the corset back and the off the shoulder, and then eventually the embroidery that I do at the end. So here I put the waistband on, so I fold a strip that had come off the bottom of the skirt and bend it so that I get all of the nasty kind of cuts on the inside, and I sandwich that over the top of the skirt so that it's all secure inside. I had to come up with a way for me to get inside the dress because it was quite hard without ripping it, so I would have normally put a zip in, but in the end I had to go with adding loops to the skirt and leaving the bodice and the skirt detached so that I could get in, and actually I could move around easier once I was in it. So once I'd pinned all of the waistband on, I made some more hoops out of masking tape and added them to the bottom of the skirt, so that I could secure it with a ribbon. I once again decided that the skirt was too long, so I cut off another strip from the bottom. I then decided to draw on some kind of embroidery, so that it would fit in more with the kind of Met Gala idea of fashion through time. So this was a very kind of historical kind of embroidery of like floral flowers. I did this really quickly, so it was a bit messy, but it kind of came out looking more like a kid had done it, which I wasn't too fussed about because it made it look a bit more fun and exciting. So I did it on all of the outward panels of the skirt, and then I went ahead and did it on the top of the bodice on the off the shoulder part, with a bit more of a simplistic kind of just flow of flowers. Excuse the mess on my floor, my room's an absolute tip whenever I start to make anything, and there's paper and masking tape all over my floor, so apologies. Finally, I highlighted the seams just to give it a bit more pop, and once I'd done that, I was done. So here's the final product.